Hey folks, James David Redding III here, bringing you another Krotos demo. This time I'm going to show you how I made this using this.
JDR3 Productions.
This here is my Pro Tools session that I have set up for this scene. We got our video track here. I have my instrument track set up with Igniter on it. And then I set up 5 individual stereo audio tracks for my records. Because one of the great things about Igniter is that each one of these has its own output. So we can record them separately in Pro Tools or in your DAW. And then we can do a little re-recording mix afterwards if we'd like. So I have them set up so that I have the granular going to its own, the synth, the one shot, the loop, and then the effects also have their own. And you can see that I have them bust into the input and they're all going out to the full mix bus that I have set up. But we're going to currently listen to our Igniter here, just because that way we can audition any sounds that we hear over in our library. So looking at Igniter, let's start with granular. We got this cop car. We're going to break it down scene by scene, cut to cut, see what's going on, especially with something as dynamic as a car chase where the cuts and the rhythm of the cuts, you really need the sound to sort of accentuate any tension or stress that you might want to be causing with it. We have this cop car here. If we go forward a little bit on, it is a Chevy. So we want our cop car to have a little bit of a toughness to it, a little extra oomph. Let's start with our granular engine here, which we can now control engine and exhaust sounds from, though you can really drop whatever granular into here. You know, we have engine and exhaust that come with full tank of Igniter. You can take an engine and drop it in the exhaust side if you want. If you want 2 engines and you want to mix them, you can do that, which is one of the great things about it. In this case, what I'm going to do is actually take the Ford F-150 exhaust. I kind of like this beefiness of it, right? Just kind of got that extra little growl to it. So I'm going to take that, and then one of my favorites for doing sort of souped up vehicles that we need to have some growl and some bite to, I'm going to take this engine right here. Right? It's just got that little bit of engine rattle, a little bit of like gnarliness to it. I am going to mix a little bit more towards the growl side and go a little bit more with the exhaust there. And our shuffle depth, I'm going to just knock down just a little bit while we're in our idle and change our idle fade just a little bit, just so that it can be a little smoother when we get there. And controlling the master rev section here. We got a good growl and bite to it. Almost a little dragster type sound. I kind of like that. All right, now let's manipulate a little further though. Let's make it more, I almost like to say it adds a little more realism to it and also allows a little more dynamics to it. In our mod here, our mod section, I'm going to turn on the LFO for the granular RPM. Now in the default, it already comes up with granular RPM in mod 1. So we're going to take that and we're going to turn on the LFO and we're going to do the gain like 0.3. We're going to knock the frequency down pretty low. We don't want it going crazy. What I like about this is it adds these little fluctuations to it and just sort of allows it to be a little realer to me. Now, the other thing I want to do here is our RPMs, when they're all the way down right now, are going to 0 and our engine's not stopping. So RPM's going to 0, right? It's going to keep going. We're going to goose our low end here so that it never quite goes down to 0. A little extra fluff in there, which I kind of like. So now, right now when we do our revs up, it just sort of does a normal, almost linear ramp. I mean, we see it right here, right? that's all great if, we're just going to have the car sitting here revving, but it's not. It does a takeoff, right? It spins its wheel, takes off, and gets some traction, goes down the road. So there's got to be a little extra load. Currently, the load's set all the way up to 100, and that just, if we start the load at 100 and we're revving up, it's not really doing anything. So we want to add some dynamics to this. So we're going to leave the loop position there. I like that on 2. Mod 3 is empty right now. So we're going to throw load in there. And again, we're not going to let load go all the way down to 0. And let's take a listen to how the load going up sounds with our revs going up. Now it sounds a little bit more like it's trying. It's trying to get going. We want to get the load going a little faster, and we can bend this line. We can put in points if we want. We can do all sorts of things. We can make it sound like it's going through a gear shift if we want. We can do something like that. That would be perfect if we were doing a slowdown, right? To have that downshift happen, the automatic downshift happen. We're not doing a slowdown here, so we're going to right click and get rid of that point, and we're going to just ramp our load up a little faster than our RPM, right? We can see our RPM line is here straight. Notice when you bounce between the mods, you still see the representation of the other mods. So here we go. We can ramp that up now. Let's take a listen. I'm liking the sound of that, and I think that gives us a good takeoff for our engine going. Let's take a look at it here. I think that works pretty good for our engine taking off, but we're not done yet. I mean, we could stop there and just do this and record it in and be like, all right, let's put the rest in with sound effects editorial. But you know what? We have these great other tabs here that help us blend it all together in one. So we can go to our one shots, and this is going to be really useful. We got this tire spin out here, and it's kicking up some slush and everything like that. So if we turn off our granular filter here and we go over and we type in skid, we get these skids that come with the igniter full tank. All right. Sounding pretty good. So let's take one of these and pop it in here. And you know what? We're going to start it a little later here. We're going to start it there. And each one of these sample bays correlates with the timeline up here. And when we trigger our master revs here, you can see that we play along the timeline. And we can put in triggers that go forward or reverse. We can also have it go in both directions that when the timeline passes over it, or we can have it stop at a certain point also. In this case, we want our skid sounds to trigger right around the start of our timeline as we're revving up to get that tire spin go. So we're going to pop it in somewhere in here. And by double clicking, we put in the first arrow, click again, it reverses it, goes both directions or stop. In this case, we want to go forward. Let's take a listen. That sounds like it's going to help out. Now, the one thing about this is that it's very dry. It might be really cool if we get a little slush happening here now. You can look real quick. We got gravel stops. They got a little grit to them, but they still sound very dry. Still sound very dry. What's great is that I can go to my files. And in files, I can go through my own setup, my own files here. In this case, I've already pulled some sound effects, and we're going to take one of the peel outs. I think we're going to go for this one here. We don't need it to be quite so long. Again, we're going to trigger it around the same time as the other one. So that way they happen at the same time. Let's take a listen. That, I think, will work. Let's take a look. I I think that works really pretty nicely. Excellent. All right, one more thing that I would like to do. No cop takes off after a speeding car without their siren going. It's just not safe. So let's go ahead and throw in a siren. That one's got a nice start to it. We're going to throw that in as our cop car takes off as a one shot. And we're going to put that even earlier than our skids. Let's take a look and see how this works. So I think that's going to work pretty awesome for it. I'm going to go ahead and set up my Pro Tools and record it into those individual tracks I set up, right? So I can just pop those into record ready. Let's go to the end of the scene here, just because we don't need to record too much past it. Select to the beginning, put ourselves into quick punch with a little pre-roll, a little post-roll. That way, if we jump the gun or we're a little late, we still catch it. And we can go ahead and record this right in here. Excellent. There we go. Got nicely recorded in. And now I didn't have to throw the car synth and the loop or the effects in, so we can actually just take those out right now. They're blank. And we want to move on to the next scene. But before I do that, because of the fact that I want to make sort of comp tracks for all of this, let's go ahead and highlight these and let's duplicate them. We can just drag them down here. And that way they're ready to be played back later, right? And we can start off on our next scene here. All right, our next sequence here has our cop car and car being pursued, sort of taking off down the road, a little bit of a swerve. So really we want to get the cop car up a little more engine wise, see what's going to happen. And in Igniter, at this moment in time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually just mute my one shots because I don't need my one shots to be triggered. I'm going to keep the engine and exhaust the same as they were. Same with the RPM and load modulations. And now I need to keep that siren going though, right? So we're going to go to our loop section. And by going to our loop section, we can take our siren, either one. I have the one that we used before with the start, or I have one with a little more distance to it. And I think since we go on this upper shot and most of our other shots sort of stay far away, we're going to pop this one in. All right, we don't need to listen to you every time. And we're going to try to see if we can get this to loop nicely in our loop section. And, you know, we have our loop position here that we can control. We can actually go through the loop position faster. We can have it go forward and back in the loop position. Really, this time around, I don't want the loop position to change at all, right? I just want the loop position to stay in one place. So I'm going to take off the modulation for that at the moment. And I'm going to place my loop position right in the middle here. So that way it's at the highest volume of this loop part here. So that's going to work pretty nicely for us. We can actually knock down our loops just a little bit. And one thing that's, you know, happening in the scene, we take a look, right? They come into view. So maybe get a little extra movement to it. And what's great is that we can add a Doppler to our master or our effects. We can add the Doppler wherever we want. And what's cool about the Doppler is that you can put in a Doppler effect that goes across an XY axis. I do find most of the time, because of the fact that I want to do my left-right panning independently, and sometimes you don't want to have the pan or whatever, I tend not to manipulate the X part of it too much. If I option click, it'll send it center, but I do want to manipulate my Y axis. And so I can actually take this and drag it up to the modulator, and I'll put it where the loops were. And we can see here now, we go down, it'll go all the way down to the bottom and then come up and go past our microphone area, or our main listening position would be the 0 point. And maybe we don't want to go so far away, or maybe we do. We can control the range again with our range finder here, right? See how far it can go. All right, so even when it goes all the way up, it's not going to go too far past 0. Maybe we'll let it go a little bit more. Maybe we'll arc it a little bit so it comes up on us a little quicker. All right. And actually, we do want to change our granular maybe. So let's go back to our granular here and maybe not allow our revs to go down too far. Maybe change our load, not allow that to go down too far, make it all happen a little faster. All right, so the only unrealistic part about that is that the engine's a little louder than the loop. So let's go ahead and boost our loop up and pull back our granular a little bit. All right, that's working kind of nice. I think if we go ahead and take a look at it, I think that's going to work pretty nice just for this little snippet here. And again, we can go ahead in and we can highlight what section we need from our Pro Tools, from our video window. All right, we can go ahead here and we can say, all right, we want to start, maybe we start a frame before the cut. All right, we just want to record right in there. Just that little sequence right there. All right, let's go ahead and pop our tracks into record again. Now this time, let's be a little smart about our recording. And we need our granular. We don't need synth. We don't need one shot. We do want loop though. We don't need effects. I just thought of something. If I put my Doppler on the master here, well, that's not going to work for the loops or the granular. So what we're going to have to do is actually take our Doppler, and we're going to have to put a Doppler on the loop, put a Doppler on the granular, and we can turn it off here. Put on this Doppler, we're going to have to take our Y source and put it there and make it about the same as what we had. And same with our Doppler on our granular. And make that about the same as what we had. And now it should react the same way as it did before. I think this will work pretty nice. All right, we have our video section highlighted. We have our granular and loops highlighted. Let's go ahead and record this little cop chasing up here. Helps if we start our igniter. Nice little quick record there. And we can go ahead and take these and drag them right down to here. And what's great is that we could just go ahead and crossfade it across. Actually allow it to go across a little bit more. All right, and if we take a listen. Maybe we'll bring our engine sound in a little sooner. Just nudge them over a couple frames. Drag that out a little bit. Drag our crossfade out a little bit. See what this does for us. Maybe we can line these up a little better. Getting there. Let's continue on with our cop car, shall we? All right, next part of our video is a further shot of our illustrious cop car. From behind, catching up, it sort of skids over. What we can do is we could take our Doppler mod, and instead of going from back to front, we can actually reverse the mod and go from front to back. Now, the thing is that we don't want it to ever pass our listening position, our 0 point. So we can actually take our range here and adjust it. And that way it's sort of catching up on us. Now, we also don't need to go the whole range. So we can actually bring our mod line, right? We never actually catch all the way up to it. We don't need to go silent. We can adjust the distance that it's traveling from us. We get a little extra perspective in there. That's kind of nice. Now, one other thing that happens here is that our cop car sort of skids over to the side, right? It does a little chirp, maybe a little chirp there, right? So let's go back to our one shots. Let's unmute our one shots. Go back here, and we don't need these ones anymore. We can keep them there if we'd like to, right? We can just mute those one shots if we'd like to, and we can use the last one, or we can clear them, which in this case, I don't mind clearing because we're moving on to the next scene. And we kind of want a little extra skid for when our cop car goes over. So let's unmute these. right click here and clear our triggers. And again, let's go and find a nice little tired chirpy skid. There we go. That one might work nice. And with this number 2, we kind of want it to happen halfway through our timeline here. You know, maybe trigger it somewhere in there. Let's see. Pull down the volume a little bit on it. Maybe pull down the volume a little bit more on it. I like it though. I think we can also take our granular and have it already be up a bit since our cop is now at almost max speed. Let's take a look again. I think this will work. I just need to get my timing a little better. And then we can also go to our Y Dopplers here and make it not so far away. I think this is going to work nicely. Let's give it a shot. Go ahead and send ourselves into record. And this time we want to put the one shot back in. We have our section highlighted. One thing that happened here is my timing wasn't perfect with hitting the skid, right? That little skid across did not work perfectly. Well, what's great, since we have it all recorded individually here, I can go back in and I can move that to where that skid would happen. Skid happens around there, right? Everything else sort of worked pretty well. Let's go ahead and drag them down here, put our little crossfades on, and let's take a listen. Right, so I could go ahead and readjust my timing. I can even adjust my levels on these a little bit. Excellent. I think that's working out pretty well. Get some close-ups of our police officers that are in pursuit. Go from our skid, we get to the engine coming towards us, and then even there. Excellent. So what we're going to do is we can take off our one shot. We no longer need that. And we're going to go to our granular RPM. And since we're totally switching perspectives, previous shots, we could go off of the exhaust a little bit more. Why don't we go ahead and just switch up our mix to our engine here and go a little more towards the engine side of things. And this adds a nice dynamic. It still keeps the same flavors, right? Just a different balance of them. And this way we can, you know, play with perspective a little bit more to keep the energy going. We still have our siren happening in loops, which is great. And we can go ahead and see how this is going to work for us. I think we're going to want our granular to keep ramped up there, go a little bit higher. We're going to go ahead and we're actually going to turn off the Doppler. We don't need the Doppler effect really anymore. We're sort of staying in the same zone. I think we do want our granular to have a little more movement than that though. So let's go ahead and change that. We want to give ourselves going from a little less RPMs to a little higher, just so that we have a little more dynamics happening here. I think that's going to work nicely for us. I think that is going to end up being something that works. Our record, we can turn off our one shot because we're not going to be recording any one shots. We're just going to be going with our extra granular RPM and our loop. That'll work for that. We can see here, we recorded those nicely in. And then our next shot is really similar to what we just had, except that when we get to doing the criminal car, the car that's being chased, we'll probably go to the exhaust sound for that one. Let's go ahead and set up this next shot though, which is again staying with the cop car perspective engine. And what we can do is we can even bring our RPMs back down a little bit so that they jump up on the cut. Let's take a look at that. Might have been a little too excited on that one. Let's see. I think this is going to work out pretty nicely. So let's go ahead and set up for the next shot, which is this shot of the cop car behind. Probably just go with a little more engine, a little more siren, maybe maybe actually take our y-axis here and back it off a bit. And what we can do is we can take our y-axis here on our mod and we can put them more away from us, give us a little space here. Maybe not that far. Maybe we'll bring them a little closer. Gotta turn our Dopplers back on. Maybe that's a little too far. Let's bring it a little closer to this 0 point. A little bit closer. That sounds good. So let's go ahead and record this back in for us. Nice. I think that'll add a nice little perspective shift to us. This next scene, our cop car is way behind and comes zooming up past us. This is where the Dopplers are going to come in really handy for us. So let's go ahead and set that up. So we're going to go ahead and push our Doppler up and have it come towards us and actually go past a little bit. I think that's going to work pretty well. And we're going to change our granular a little bit, have it ramp up a little bit faster, and we can change our load too, since our load actually should be pretty much towards full load. They're not backing off at all. We want to let it go past us too, right? We know that at some point they do go past, so let's go ahead and extend our range on our y-axis. That happens a little faster than I thought it did. Let's change our dynamics on our y-axis. We don't need to go quite so far away. One of the other great things is, since everything is sort of automatable in this, and we see that our cop car is coming from a head-on shot. We were just on the engine, and it zooms past us there. What we can do is we can go to another mod section and throw the granular mix in here, and we can switch that up so that as we go past our midpoint, we can switch which side of the mix we're hearing, so that we're going from engine to exhaust as we go past, which will be kind of cool, right? We can actually have it happen a little bit faster, a little bit sooner, right? I think this is going to work out really nicely for us. Let's go ahead and record that in. Now, my timing might not have been perfect on that, so let's take a look. All right, it looks like my Doppler might have happened a little too soon. That's why we do the quick punch, and we can go ahead and just nudge those all a little later. Bring them down to our playback tracks. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going shot to shot using Igniter to build up our movement, our engine movement, our cop car movement.
Zoom by so we can turn our Dopplers back on and we can set up our RPMs. Continuing on our merry cop chase. Let's see. Next shot we go to. Again, we can go ahead and change the granular, keep our speed up.
All right, and then we come to the end of our chase here. It looks like we got skid and we got some door opens, right? So let's go back to using our one shots for that. In Pro Tools, we'll make sure that we put our one shots into record ready. And back here in Igniter, let's go to our one shots and we can get rid of this tire skid that we used before. And we can go ahead and find a new tire skid. Actually, probably will work pretty well. We just have to time it right. So we'll pop it up here on the timeline. And then we got those door opens that happen. So let's see if we can find, we have some car Foleys here. That sounds like a good, let's go ahead and put both these in. And they're going to happen a little bit later. All right, and now the other thing is that our vehicle comes to a stop. So we can actually take our RPMs and bring them all the way down to the bottom here. And this way, as we go forward in timeline, our car will come to a stop and just idle. Yeah, we can pump up our one shots a little bit here. We can leave our siren going, and we can have our load turned down too, because our engine's not going to be cranking quite so hard. I think that's going to work pretty nice. I think we need to make our first door a bit louder. So we're going to crank the gain up on that. We can make our gain on our skid a little less. So let's go ahead and give this a shot and see how it works for us. think if we just throw some crossfades there, timing of that door I think will work better. Let's go ahead and make it so that we can hear everybody. We can knock down the volume of this one because it's on the fade out. Felt like our RPMs dropped a little too quickly, so we can nudge them back a little bit. By doing them as individual stems, we can manipulate the timing of it all. Let's watch our cop car from the beginning here. Next, we'll do the pursued, the criminal, the speedster. Okay, now we're going to get started on our car being pursued. Go ahead and go to clean start. Gives us a blank slate to go with. I've set it up so that my igniter is going into just the pursued car master, and it's just going to take the stereo output of igniter because this car doesn't have the individual elements that we need as much as the cop car at this moment. So most of it is just going to be the engine exhaust and RPMs. So we can go and use sort of a normal engine. We don't need something as robust as the F-150 or any sort of growl or anything like that. So let's go ahead and pull up granular. And we are going to pull it in an engine and exhaust of our choosing. We could choose really whatever we like at this moment. We can, if we wanted to make it sound like an Audi, we could. If we wanted to make it sound like a Porsche, those weren't really... I mean, the thing is that we need to sound sort of like this car does. As much fun as it might be to put the tractor in, I don't think that's going to work in this case. Let's just go for the Honda Civic. Excellent. We'll go with the Civic right now. I think that will work pretty nicely for us here. And our first shot here is, of course, the car going across at a fairly high rate of travel left to right. So why don't we just initiate a Doppler here on our master. By double clicking on the puck, it centers it to the 0 point. We don't actually need our granular to change at this moment, so why don't we go back to our mod here and we'll take our granular off. Our RPM's going pretty high, our load pretty high on that. All right, that's sounding pretty good, except there's a big jump that happens as we cross over the center point. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and take our spread and our spacing. I find this to work fairly well, is if we take these and sort of take the modulation line here, center it up so that they sort of stay where they were, right? Almost centered to where they were. And then we have them come down and calm down that spread between them. Let's go ahead and give that a record. All right, now I missed that as far as timing, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this, and since I'm in quick punch, just back that off a little bit. There we go, I'm liking that. We can just go ahead and scooch along. Okay, there they are. All right, so I've added in a couple of a little background tone just to help smooth things out and a couple little whooshes and stuff. Let's take a look at the scene as it's done. So there you have it. car chase with sirens and all done with Igniter. Thanks for watching. I know it was a long one, but hopefully you got something great out of it. Until next time.
JDR3 Productions.